this is my project for the monthly Mark Rober electrical engineering part, and it is a day-night cycle infinity mirror. So if you're not familiar with an infinity mirror, you will have a light source in between a two-way mirror and a mirror. They'll bounce back and forth and give an infinity effect. So what I wanted to do a little bit different was to have a day-night cycle so I could use a photo sensor. That meant that in the daytime I wanted to use addressable LEDs, and I could manipulate them in some way with a with a proxy sensor. And then I would have a night cycle where I would use UV lights and some sort of fluorescent liquid, and I wasn't 100% sure I wanted to do it, but this is what the plan was. Now this turned out to be an incredibly complicated project. Addressable LEDs are not super simple to work with, but it ended up awesome, as you can see. So the first thing we had to do was go into CAD and try and design this thing. So I made it out of 2x4s and kind of roughed in the LED lights and a little drip tray that we would use for our fluorescent fluid. I cut out the pieces and I wanted to tape them up to get a nice black middle so we'd get a good reflection. Painted everything black, and once I removed the tape it looked kind of cool, but I felt like it might have needed some sort of a stain. So I found a stain that looked pretty good, and then I stained everything. Next, I drilled things together for a U so I could work with it easily, and couldn't wait. I had to try and see what it looked like, and it started to look pretty cool. I 3D printed out the reservoir and worked on a couple different designs till it fit the pump. Now came the hard part. I actually had to cut apart the LEDs. I had to re-solder them in order to have two splittable LEDs that I'm going to be able to control with the Arduino. This scared me because I'd never done much soldering and these are very small pieces, but I ended up putting it together and everything looked really good. Tried to hide the wires and just put the mirror in so that I can get a better idea how everything was going to fit. I taped up the sides of the LED so that it would stop getting in the way, and then made a little plexiglass case to try and stop splashing. Next, I wanted to mount the Arduino, and I mounted it to the back so that I could still take apart wires and adjust things if I needed to. After that, we actually had to get an alternative power supply for the amount of LEDs we were using. We actually needed 5 volts and 10 amps. But the scary part is I'm actually going to have to cut off the connector and wire this to my Arduino and to my LEDs. And if I screw this up, I could fry my Arduino. So I was a little worried. I labeled everything and carefully soldered it together, and luckily everything worked. Next, I was able to get some relays off of a friend of mine who does a lot of programming stuff. So the relays will actually let me turn on and off much larger current devices, such as the pump I plan on using, as well as tied in the USB for the UV lights that are going to give me the fluorescent effect. So at this point, all the hardware was wired in. We had the photo sensor, the ping sensor, the relays to turn off our pump and turn on the UV LEDs. It's just a matter of coding. And I was really new at coding, so this was going to be the most difficult part. I'd done everything individually, but when it came to addressable LEDs, they were very, very complicated compared to what I was expecting. So I actually need to call to a programmer friend to give me a hand. So I kind of settled as I wanted, as I came closer to the device in day mode, the lights would light up, and then when I started to walk back from it, the lights would start to disappear. And I'm doing this on 2 separate strips, so I kind of made it pretty complicated for myself, but I did get it figured out. Finally, we were ready to tie the pump in. I was fortunate enough to get in contact with a person who had some hydroponic drip kind of valves that would allow me to control the drip rate so they wouldn't be streaming out. I did a few tests to try and control the amount of splashing, and I got a pretty good system. So I tied everything together eventually and ran the hose, drilled the hole, and things seemed to work pretty good, but it was a little bit scary because now I'm adding water to the system. So to make it fluorescent, I actually took a bunch of highlighters, broke them apart, and put them in a bottle and shook it up and added it to the system, and at that point it was showtime. And so there we have it. We had a device that as we walked up to it, the lights would light up as we got closer. And then if we turn off the lights, we get a cool UV effect with a fluorescent dye that would drip into the container as we intended. Turned out awesome. Thanks for watching.